Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Black Real Estate Dialogue podcast. I'm very excited about this interview. It's been a long time coming. Here with me, I have Danny Carter, who's actually our newest sponsor on the show. So, Danny, thank you so much for taking some time to chat today. I appreciate it, man.
Oh man, most definitely, man. Appreciate you having me, bro.
For sure, for sure. So, first, I would love to hear more from you about what your childhood was like and what you saw, or maybe what you didn't see, that shaped your view of building wealth.
Yeah, growing up, so my grandmother and my mother primarily raised me, and my grandmother's from Forest City, Arkansas, which I'm sure is a place most people never heard of. And my great grandfather, he was a farmer, and him being able to achieve um, even moderate levels of wealth and success. I mean, it was a big deal back then. I mean, those are times where you used to get caught walking down the street, you can get lynched. So down there in Arkansas, man, he had farmland, and he grew crops and all the things that we probably need to get back to doing now. And because that influence was on my grandmother, she was always very frugal. So she would always kind of tell me about being frugal and remind me that it was important to save and pay your tithes and do all of that. And then my mom kind of on the other side would talk to me about buying property because we were renting in LA and she couldn't afford anything down here. So she decided to move to Palmdale when I was 12, and she bought a house out there for like 70 grand. And
Wow.
she was telling me, she said, "Hey, look, if you save your money, you can buy a house with like $10,000 down." And as a kid, I was like, man, 10 G's. I was like, I was working at Six Flags and I had like maybe like 1,500 in my account. I was like, damn, I'm almost there. I could get to 10, you know what I mean? So that I think that was like the spark. All those conversations I had with them was what sparked me into wanting to buy property, you know.
Definitely. I think that's pretty cool, man. Especially as a kid, just having your mom make it seem like it's something that was very feasible and very doable for you at such a young age. I'm sure, you know, maybe as a kid you didn't notice, but I'm sure later on in life you can see that that seed really impacted you a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I think when like, my mom's a talker, my grandmother's a talker, they always giving lessons out and giving game out. So like amongst my friends, I was always the person who was kind of like the voice of reason or the logical thinker because they prepared me like at a very young age for what could come. For example, like my mom used to always do like these, I don't want to call them like emergency drills, but she would tell me like, hey, if you ever get lost, here's where you go, this is what you should do. So I remember one time summer camp, they took us to Knott's Berry Farm, and this kid and I had gotten lost. I don't know, man, how many, it was like 7, 5, something like that. And I remember we didn't know where anybody was. Everybody looks like giants, and the kid started crying. And I remember he was like panicking, like we was gonna die. And I remember I grabbed his hand and like I just walked to like an adult and told him like I saw somebody who worked there. I was like, hey, we're lost. Like our group is whatever, whatever. And they found us, and and I always think back on that. I'm like, damn, man, if you prepare, your kids early with the right spark, right seeds, it'll activate when it needs to activate. You just don't know when it's gonna happen, you know.
For sure, for sure. So why real estate? Why did you? I know we got a bit of a taste, but I guess as you grew up, what was it for you that made you want to use real estate as one of your ways to get wealth once you grew up?
Yeah, man. I just I've always wanted to have money. You know,
Yeah,
that was always it, man. Like there's no special reason outside of it. I know sometimes people like they dig for these deeper reasons, but
yeah,
mine is just what it is, man. I was trying to get paid, and uh, for me, so I work in the music business. I've been in the music business since I was 19 years old. So I manage songwriters and producers. I have my own company on that side. I started out as an intern at 19 years old and continued to work until I got in a position where I could get paid. And the music business, although yeah, I have been able to purchase property because of the money that I made, it was not like the cribs edition, the
yeah.
champagne stocked in the refrigerator from top to bottom. I mean, it's very feast or famine. So when it's going well, it's going well, and when it's not, it's not. So for me, when I left my last position, I was kind of like laid off slash fired, but not really. Like my boss came to me, he was like, "Hey man, I really feel like you can do this on your own. You're bringing in your own clients and yada yada." Because I was working in a management firm, and he was like, "I feel like you can do it on your own," which I feel like is a nice way of saying like, "Yo, it's time for you to go." You know, So when I left, I had in my mind that I was going to leave, but I didn't know when. And when it happened, like most things in life, it happens when you don't expect. So I had to quickly figure out like how to pivot and maneuver. So the client that I have now, Dim Joints, I took him with me. I was managing him with my partner, who I still manage him with, but my partner and I split the bread. So we making money, but half of what the commission is ain't enough for you to be able to get by on. So I said, all right, I got to figure out how to supplement my income so I can still do what I love, but make real money like a real human on the side. So that's where, man, I started digging in deep, and YouTube University, man. I got a PhD from YouTube University. That's where I learned how to flip houses, man.
Definitely. So tell us about your first real estate transaction. Was it a flip, wholesale deal, buy and hold? What did that look like for you?
Yeah, so the first house was actually a house in Palmdale, California. I was trying to buy a property down here in LA, and this was around 2013, 2012. So we still in the belly kind of the crash. And I'm not knowing any of this because I work in the music business. Like, I don't know that the world fell apart, and all these people, I didn't understand anything about finance back then. And then so I'm down here shopping in LA, can't find anything because everything's higher or too expensive. So I thought at the time. Come to find out now, it was half off. But you know, I was looking and looking and wasn't having much success. And then my mom was like, "Man, why don't you look out here in Palmdale?" And for me, you know, Palmdale has a weird space in my heart because on the one hand, I met some of my best friends that had some of my best experiences while I lived there. On the other hand, I was homesick for LA the whole time to come back. So Palmdale is home for me to a degree, but once I left, it represent like Palmdale represented for me, and for anybody who's listening who might be in Palmdale, Lancaster, whatever, it represented for me like limited opportunity. Because there's no buildings there, I think, that are over like 10 stories high. Like, you know what I mean? So like there's only so much going on. And I was like, look, man, when I'm gone, it's in the rear view. I'm not going back. So
Yeah.
when she was like, you need to go, why don't you look out here? I was reluctant because I was like, man, I'm done. Like, that's it. I'm done with Palmdale. I'm back home now. But, your parents, a lot of times your mother knows best, right? She got the experience. So I went out there, was shopping around. I was getting closer, but I was still missing because somebody would put in a higher offer, a faster offer, whatever. And then one day, man, my agent called. She said, "Hey, I got this other agent that has like this short sale listing, and you got first dibs if you want it." So I was like, "Damn, okay." So the houses we were looking at, man, they built like in the '90s, late '80s. This one was built in 2006, so no, 2008. So it was only like 4 years old at the time. And I remember walking in that house, man, and like the people had to bounce because it was part of like what happened during the crash and everything. Utilities hadn't been on; it was freezing inside. But I remember like, oh, this is my house. You know what I mean? Like when I walked in, I was like, this is the one. And sure enough, man, lined all the ducks up, and 45, 30 days later, had my keys, and that was the first one. That was my first rental property. And yeah, that set me on a journey right there.
Sure, definitely. So what was that? What was that experience like? Just as a new landlord, you just purchased your first house. Like, what was that like for you?
Man, I had no idea what I was doing. Like for me, it was like more so the title, the label of being able to say, yo, I'm a homeowner in my 20s. I just graduated college. What I'm saying? Like I got all the credentials, everything you're supposed to have to look like you on pace for where you're supposed to be in that part of your life. That was so more so the obsession for me was like trying to get homeowner under 30 vibes, and once I got those, that was it. But the problem with that was that I didn't take a second to calculate like the math on how all this worked. So luckily, you know, I guess they say what they say, God looks out for fools and old people, you know what I mean? Like I got into this deal not knowing anything about the numbers. Thankfully, it cash flowed, but not a lot. It was like $200 a month, at least not for me. So I'm naturally impatient. So I'm like $200 and I need to make $10 million. This is gonna take a long time. Like, so I was like, man, what did I get myself into? So that on top of the fact that I didn't know anything about landlording, but I was, I guess, smart enough to know that I needed to hire somebody who did. So I hired a property management company. Problem was I didn't know how to vet property management companies. I just hired what I thought made sense. The guy put somebody in who ultimately stopped paying rent. In that first year, man, I saw everything you could think about. Like they set the house on fire, the backyard. When they left, they kicked holes in the doors, they poured bleach on the carpets. Like I saw enough that would break a back of a landlord in that first year, and
Wow.
um, I wasn't gonna quit, but it was definitely like a rough first year learning the game, and eventually we got them out and finally got that property stabilized, and yeah, moved on from there.
Definitely. So one thing I want to take from that story is, you went through hell the first year, right?
Yeah,
And a lot of people would have just, folded their hands and said, you know what, forget this house, forget this real estate stuff, maybe sell the house, or maybe, you know, just put somebody else in there and just stop there and just quit completely. What was it for
yeah.
you where you were like, I'm not gonna quit. I want to keep going and trying to see what I could do with real estate. What was it for you that kept you going?
We never fold. Like I'm Black American descendant of slaves. We never fold. We made it all the way here from where we came from. We made it through everything that we made it through, and we here. Like what I look like folding over a rental property. Like my grandfather could have got lynched just for trying to own some property. Not to mention like my other grandfather on my other side, like my the family had to like take my dad around a certain way in Indiana so he would not see bodies that had been lynched. You know what I mean? So like this is my lineage, and for anybody that's black, like this is what you cut from. What you look like folding over a rental property, you be all right. So you just lick those wounds, and you come back, and you keep grinding. So for me, folding is never part of the equation. It's non-option.
Definitely, definitely. So where did it go from there? How did things grow and develop from that first property on?
Yeah. So that property, I took that property, had it rented out for. Let me see. We got it in 2013. I think I sold it in 2017. So yeah, about 4 years, and it was just kind of on autopilot. Like I had my mom again, man, came through clutch. So her aunt, no, her friend had a niece who was a property manager, and she was like, "Yo, why don't you talk to Letitia? She's really nice, and maybe she can, help get things right with the property." I said, "All right, cool." So I hit Letitia, and she was like, "Yo," she's like, "Let's talk, let's meet." I met her. She was cool. The vibe was dope, and one thing I liked about her was because I had just come out that other situation, I was kind of looking out for some other things, and she did something unique where she was like, "Look, I put in my agreements with the tenants that I can drop by to check, 30, I guess what she say, 30 days. I forgot what the window was or whatever, but she would give them the heads up like, hey, I will pop in, 30, 45 days just to walk through and make sure you're not destroying things in the property. Right. So that in and of itself, I was like, okay, she's working with a higher level of accountability. That's my type of person. That way I can make sure ain't nobody kicking holes in the doors again, yada yada.
Yeah.
So we got her in, stabilized the property. And she was like, "Hey, what you think about Section 8?" And I was like, "Well, outside of knowing about it from like being on, knowing people who've been on Section 8, thankfully, like, I never had to be on it with my mom, but like knowing how it worked from that angle, that was all I knew." So she was like, "Yo," she was like, "Man, I really think you should think about a Section 8 tenant." So she was like, "The money's going to come in like clockwork. You don't have to chase rent." Now, keep in mind, I'm coming off of having to chase rent, right? The last 4 or 5 months the people were in there, they weren't paying and damaging the property. So you like everything she's saying is music to my ears. It's the plug for the socket. I'm like, boom, boom, boom. It's all connected. So I said, all right, let's run it. So man, she went and found us a Section 8 tenant, and that was my introduction to Section 8. From there.
That's amazing. Something I forgot to ask: did you use like a any down payment assistance program for that first property?
Nah, so what I did was I got into that property for 5% down on a conventional loan. So that's how it was. No down payment assistance with that one, and the property was so cheap. I bought it for $168,000. So,
Wow,
even being young, and whatever, I still had enough change to pay for the down payment and all that. So yeah, it was cool.
definitely. That's awesome, man. Cool, cool. And then from that point on, did you continue buying in California? I know you also do invest out of state as well.
Yeah,
Um,
the king of out of state investments right here, Sam.
yeah,
Yeah,
right.
man. Yeah, man. No, I do invest out of state. So basically, what happened was that property appreciated like crazy.
Mhm.
So I ended up getting like $100,000 out of that property when I sold it in 2017,
Wow.
and I took that money and moved it to the Midwest. So I bought a 4-unit building, and then I turned around and bought another 4-unit building, like
Wow.
less than a month later. And one of them was already full of tenants, and I found this dude on Craigslist. Man, he was going through a divorce. He was like, "Yo, I would never sell this property, but I'm going through this divorce, and I got to pay my wife and yada yada." So he said, "I hate to let this property go, but I'm letting it go." I said, "All right, well, let's work it out." So I bought that one from him for 145, and then I bought another one for 35 grand. But this one was like, man, it was a trap house. So, God knows what was popping in the house. So I had to literally like kind of gut it and rehab the whole thing, from the inside out. And that's what I did. Yeah. So I stopped buying in California, liquidated that property, took that money to the Midwest, did a couple things for my family, and then just kept it moving from there.
That's amazing. Can you talk more about your decision to take the money from the home sale and move it to the Midwest? What was it for you that kind of led you to think that was a good the next best thing to do?
Yeah, well, I think for anybody that's had a chance to go to the Midwest or cheaper markets, who's based in California, the first thing that you find out is that the housing is a lot cheaper. So you like, man, like I remember my brother works at a transmission plant in Indianapolis, so I went out there to see him, and we riding around the city, and I said, man, how much these houses cost? He said, oh, over here, I don't know, man, maybe 30, $40,000. I was staring at him while he's driving. I'm in the passenger seat. I'm like 30, 40, what? So at that time, I was looking to flip my first property. I was learning from a dude named Juan Pablo on YouTube who has a company called 100% Finance. He was showing how you can use business credit and you can pull money off business credit cards and use it as a down payment to get your first hard money loan to flip your first property. So at that time, it was between ATL and Indianapolis for me. I said, all right, the first person to bring me a good deal, whatever state I landed in with the first deal, is where I'm going to be. So if it would have happened in the A, we'd be having a conversation about the A right now. But it happened in Indianapolis. So um, I found that first deal there, and I mean, for me, it was a no-brainer. I would continue to cash flow and appreciate in California, but man, like if you're looking to eventually like leave your 9 to 5 or become financially free, you're gonna have to get some passive income to come in. And for me, that's where moving the money from Cali to Indiana made perfect sense. If I could take 100 grand and buy 4 or 5 houses and be cash flowing $1,200 versus having it parked here and making $200, I mean, it seems like a natural choice on what to do. You know,
Definitely. Did you have any fears just knowing that you were purchasing a property that you couldn't see easily? Like, what did you go through any of those like challenges and emotions starting off?
100%. And I think that that's something that like anybody should know that's looking to invest out of state, which I'm sure you tell people is, you're gonna be afraid and you're gonna be anxious and all that. So just accept it as being part of the process. Don't run from it, run to it. So figure out what's making you afraid and then do what you can to shore up those things that you're not confident about. So for me, the thing that I was afraid of was paying a contractor money and having them run off, or not doing the work or whatever. So again, luckily I had been listening to Bigger Pockets and some other stuff, and I found out about a project management company for that first flip that I did out of state. I hired them to oversee the contractor, and it went relatively well. I would give it like a C plus on an A to F scorecard. And those fears are going to definitely be there. But if you arm yourself with the right team out of state, you can cut those down by at least a third to 2/3, in my opinion.
Definitely. So those first two properties were those buy and holds?
Yeah, it was a lot going on at one time. So the first flip I did was in 2016. Um, and then I did like two more right after. I sold that house in Cali in 2017.
Mm.
So that's when I had decided to roll my money there. I was already
Oh, okay.
there. I had flipped two houses there first. And then
Gotcha.
I was like, man, let me roll that money out of Cali into the Midwest. So those first two that I bought to hold, yeah, those two were my first two buying holds. And yeah, it was I was before I knew it, I was boom up 8 units. You know what I mean? Like
Man,
first two purchases up 8. You know,
that's incredible. That's incredible, man. How so as far as like flipping out of state, how does that work? Because it's one thing to just buy a property and put some tenants in there, but when you're flipping, of course, it's more intensive, right? There's more going on, and there's an end goal to sell. What's that experience like? Doing it from out of state, especially I guess for your first couple flips.
yeah, I mean the experience is definitely nerve wracking, man. And it how stressful it's gonna be is gonna be totally really contingent upon how good your contractor is. And when I say good, like not just good at the work, but good at communication, what their integrity level is like. All of that is going to determine how stressed out you're gonna be. So if you have a bad contractor, like I started out with, um, it's gonna be a nightmare for you. Like for me, the management company helped me, but I found out they were double dipping, so I let them go.
Oh
So
wow.
then I ended up working with a contractor directly, and that was terrible because he was terrible at business. So, and I was terrible at vetting him. I can't put it all on him. I needed to know how to vet him as an investor. So if you have a bad contractor, you will have a bad experience. If you have a good contractor, you will have a very good experience. And really, I noticed it. Flipping houses really isn't all that intensive in terms of like the amount of time it takes me. The hardest thing is really securing the deal. Once I find the deal, I just call my contractor. I'm like, hey, Annabelle, got this property over here on 123 Main Street. Can you go walk it? He'll go walk it. He comes back with the budget. And then from there, like once we close and the budget is locked in, all I got to do is send the draw payments. That's it. And we get to the end and the house is finished and I send the photographer and I put it on the market. So I don't know, maybe it's easy for me because I've done it over and over again, but I realized that like with these flips, I don't even work on them every day, and most of these houses I've never even walked inside before. So
Definitely, definitely. How did you go from like good contractor to bad? I mean, I'm sorry, bad contractor to good. Because I know you mentioned the first couple. How did you find like the one or the ones that ended up working out for you?
I would say partially by luck, partially by strategy. So I took a lot of lumps in the beginning with the first two contractors. So I still didn't really know what to look out for. Um, the third contractor came to me, Annabelle came to me through my current real estate agent. And that's why I say it's kind of strategy to a degree because first off, like one thing I learned from Juan Pablo was the rule of three. So you should always get three of everything. Like if you're going to get a quote, get three quotes. If you're going to hire a contractor, get three people to bid the job and get references and call all the references. I didn't do any of that, but part of the I guess a part of the rule of three strategy that's associated with it is references and referrals. So if you can actually get a referral to a contractor from somebody who works in the real estate business every day, the odds are that contractor is going to have a higher chance of working out for you than somebody who you met in a Home Depot parking lot who you never had a chance to interact with. So Annabelle came to me through my current real estate agent, and he said, "Hey man, I know you've been looking for another GC to add to your team. He's done some solid work on my house, so that checked one box for me. And this guy lists all my property, so I know he's not going to turn me on to somebody who's going to end up screwing me and him because it'll be harder for us to sell the property, harder for him to make money."
Right.
So he said, "Hey, talk to this guy." I talked to him, man, straight shooter, honest, and from that day forward, he and I have been working. I haven't used anybody else.
That's amazing, man. That's amazing. And so how many flips do you think you've done in Indianapolis so far?
Let me see. If I had the ballpark, I'd say probably like 12 to 15.
Wow.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. Um, and how were you financing these? Were you using like hard money? Were you raising money from investors?
Yeah, so that kind of circles back around to the school of Juan Pablo. So he was talking about business credit and how to get business credit and how to leverage it. So one thing that I've always done has been like protective over my credit, really, because my grandmother was like, I told you like the frugal side, right?
Yeah.
So I knew my credit was solid. I had a little money in the bank, so I went and applied for these business credit cards using my EIN number. for my LLC. So I got like maybe 40 grand in business credit between like Home Depot, Lowe's, and then a couple of like Visa cards. And I stripped those cards of the money, used that as the down payment, and then had the hard money lender finance the rest. And that's how I was kind of like 100% financed, like his company is saying, like I had no money in the deal to a degree. Um, so that's how I started out with like the first 10 deals was all hard money. And then I found my first private lender really like again, like God be looking out. So I was doing RVMs, which if people don't know are ringless voicemail. So I was doing RVMs looking for properties to buy, and I had some properties on my list. It might have been like from a back tax list or something like that. So one of the guys that called me back, he goes, "Hey man, yeah, I got this voicemail about this property you want to buy." And I said, "Yeah, I'm just buying properties and yada yada." And he said, "Well, I have a property manager, so you probably have to talk to him about that. Um, so I probably can't help you much with the buying side." I said, "Okay, no problem." So I'm getting ready to get off the phone, and he's like, "Hey, so what are you up to?" I said, "Well, I buy houses and I fix them up and sell them, or I keep them as rentals." He said, "Okay, well, we lend some money from time to time, so why don't you let me know if you have a deal? Maybe it's something we can work out." I said, "Oh, okay." But I'm thinking this guy's lying. I'm like, this guy not about to lend me no money. I mean, I don't even know this guy, right? So I had a deal that came down the pipeline, and his name is Tom. And I called Tom, and I was like, "Hey, Tom, this is Danny. We talked yada yada. I know you said you were interested in maybe getting involved in a couple of loans together. So here's a deal I'm looking at." And man, Tom lent me like $115,000 on the first deal we did together, and never met me a day in my life. Never seen me, ever.
Wow.
Yeah, he was just like he's like one of those. He's just a cold businessman. He's just one of those businessmen who like understand. They don't overcomplicate it. Like he didn't ask me a bunch of questions. Like he just looked at the property, I guess, saw what the value would be, realized that if I went left on the deal, worst case scenario, he has a house that he can still liquidate to get his money back. And he was, I don't know, man. Like again, like he just took a chance and it worked out. So he and I've been financing all my deals through Tom since then. And I would encourage like anybody who's going to get into this space, man, start working on your private lender relationships right now. Like I'm gonna try to add more money on top of what Tom has available for me, but it changes the game. I mean, literally, like I can call him, he'll wire the money, and we get the deal closed. Versus hard money lender, they want appraisal, they want a down payment, they want all these things, and investing some time and learning how to find some private lenders, man, that's gonna change the game for you off the top.
Definitely, definitely. And something you mentioned was ringless voicemail. So can you talk more about that and just how you go about finding your deals? Like are they usually through the MLS? Are they usually off market deals that you source yourself? Combination of the
Yeah,
two?
yeah, combination of the two. So I haven't really purchased. I might have purchased two properties off the MLS. Everything else for me is off market. So for people who don't know what that means, the multiple listing service is what the MLS stands for. It's what realtors put their properties on that are available for sale. And obviously, if they put them up, so the MLS, like think about it like it's like the mothership, and it feeds down to the baby ships like Zillow, Redfin, Trulia, Realtor.com. So all the information they have literally is like from the MLS. So obviously the whole world can see those properties. So that means that the prices and the competition to get them are going to be stiffer. For me, I prefer to get deals off market, and I like to find properties that are distressed. So by distressed, I mean back taxes, probate, code violations, whatever. So one of the ways that we hit a lot of people at one time is we use ringless voicemail, which is what RVM stands for. And we'll grab a list, let's say, of people who are tax delinquent, and their property is getting ready to get sold at a tax sale, let's say 6 months to a year from now. I'll record a message on my phone that says, "Hey, this is Danny reaching out. I've been looking at buying some more properties in the neighborhood, and just wanted to give you a ring to see if you'd be interested in selling. If so, I'd like to buy it cash as is. I can close quickly, and on the day of your choice. And if it sounds like something you want to do, give me a ring back. If not, just go ahead and delete this message." So that'll be the message that I send out. Very general. And let's say there's 10,000 people on the list. I'll send a ringless voicemail message to all 10,000 if they're available
Wow.
to get one. And then that way we sit back and see who calls back. And the way that we have it set up is we don't answer live. I know a lot of people like, I know Maxwell had like a system where you can answer live and all that. Man, that would destroy us trying to trying to answer live. So we don't. What we do is we have it route directly to a voicemail where they can leave a message. And the reason why we do that is because we know that if you leave us a message about calling you back to buy the house, you are somewhat motivated. And that starts the conversation. You know, you can't get a good deal without a seller who's motivated. So that's why we put that filter up.
I like that. Sounds like a great system. Um, Something else I wanted to ask is, so as an out of state investor, how how do you determine, let's say you find a property, right? You're like, all right, I don't
Yeah.
think I want to hold this. I want to flip it. How do you figure out, what the after repair value is? What you would make, what your investors would make. What can you give an example of how you might structure that and just the thought process you're going through during that time?
Yeah, you mean like analyzing it from a wholesaler standpoint versus a flipper, or analyzing it as a flipper?
You can say both. It's a good
Okay,
question.
so as a wholesaler, um, if I'm looking to flip it to, well, let's just start at the top. Like the big shark at the top of the food chain is the flipper. So let's just assume I'm going to be the flipper. I see a deal that gets sent out by a wholesaler. He wants $30,000 for the house. So you're like, okay. How do you know how much you're going to sell it for? What's your after repair value going to be? Everything in this business when you're flipping centers around comps. Everything. So you have to start at the end goal and work backwards. The finish line for you as a flipper is your ARV. It's the sales price. So you need to look around your property, preferably within a quarter-mile radius, to figure out what properties are selling for. And they have to be apples to apples. That means you can't take a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house that's 1,500 square feet and 1 story and compare it to a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house that's 2,000 square feet and 2 stories. It's not a true comp. So you have to go find what properties like yours are selling for in the area that have been fixed up. And then the average of that will usually give you about where your ARV is going to be. Then you start at that number and start deducting everything else. How much do I have to pay for the house? How much to fix it? How much to sell it? Because a lot of people forget about that. When you sell a property, we automatically allocate 10% of our ARV to sales costs because 6% goes to the realtors and the 4% just has a way of sprouting legs and walking out the door. I don't know where it goes, but it's usually the end buyer wants a window replaced. It's just, I mean, it just nickel and dime his way out the door. So we just create around 10% and go with that. So you deduct all your line items and that'll get you down to basically what your profit's going to be. And if you like what you see, then you buy the house.
Definitely. That makes sense. That makes sense. And so you also do some wholesaling too, right?
Yeah. We have a wholesaling company in Indianapolis and in Memphis now. We just expanded to the Memphis market. I've done one wholesale deal here in LA, but it was literally the hardest deal that I've ever had to do in my life. Most challenging deal, hardest deal. I learned the most on that deal, but yeah, we're gonna launch here in LA as well on some niche stuff like probate and stuff like that. But right now we're full time Memphis and Indianapolis. Yeah.
That's awesome. How do you find buyers since given that you're here in LA, and you're wholesaling in Indianapolis and Memphis?
Yeah, so one of the ways that we find buyers is that we have a buyer website. So it's basically like a squeeze page. And if you go to our buyer website, you fill out 3 things: name, phone, email. And that puts you on the buyers list right away. Now, you might be thinking, well, how do you get people to go to the website? Well, we put bait out in places where we know buyers are looking. So we post Craigslist ads. So our Craigslist ads are like, hey, are you looking for discounted properties? Are you a rehabber? Are you an investor? So people see that and they're like, oh yeah, let me see what they got. They see the link, they go to the site, they sign up. Another way that we do it is I pull a list of cash buyers, people who have purchased properties cash within the last 6 months in the zip codes I'm interested in. I skip trace that, which means I send it off to a service that comes back with phone numbers for all the people whose names I've submitted. And I cold call 4 days a week, 1 hour a day, every morning for cash buyers. So, even though I'm kind of like at the controls, I'm still kind of in the trenches with my guys. So I'm on the phone myself, 4 days a week talking to buyers. And it's a slower process. Like when you're going into a new market like Memphis, we're just now starting to ramp up. I might average 1 to 2 buyers a day, which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you start to add it up, like over the course of a month, you look up like, damn, okay, 1 to 2 buyers a day, 4 times, a week times 4 weeks, like, damn, I'm starting to build a substantial list of some people who I know are spending money, you know?
Sure, for sure. So when you receive a deal, are you pretty much evaluating if you want to wholesale it, if you want to flip it, or if you want to keep it as a rental?
Yeah, I mean, I think that well, once you really know like the zip codes of like your core market, when you see a certain zip code, like, I don't know if I'm gonna hold anything over there,
Got it.
or you might know like, hey, this is a rental zip code, or hey, this is an area where everybody's flipping stuff. So for me, it's just gonna really depend on kind of what the activity is. Like, let me take it out of zip code because some people will take that and make it an absolute. It's not an absolute rule. The thing that should determine what you want to do with the property is what's happening around it.
Mhm.
So if you notice that everything is getting flipped around that property, you know that you can either keep it as a rental or you can flip it. You have options. If you keep it as a rental, you know that you have an opportunity to execute what they call the BRRRR strategy, because you're probably going to have a ton of equity because of the comps that are around your house that have sold. So that's where that's what leads me to make my decision is, okay, what is this property? What is it? Where is it located? What's happening around it? And based off of that, I decide what I want to do with it.
Definitely, definitely. And what I really like the creativity and the intentionality behind sourcing deals and just really just taking matters into your own hands and not just waiting for what's on Zillow. And something I want people to pick up is that you just mentioned a whole bunch of different ways to get off market deals. So I think that's very important for people to understand.
Yeah, I think that if you're somebody who's working a 9 to 5 and you're just like, look, I don't have the time to kind of like set up a side business to source deals, then wholesalers are going to be your best friend. And by good wholesalers, let me put that in parentheses. Good wholesalers are going to be your best friend because good wholesalers are doing what I'm doing every day. They're in the trenches, sending out RVMs, they're cold calling, they're sending postcards and letters out. They're investing a good amount of money into their marketing and their business to source these off-market deals. And then they're going to be able to have an inventory that they can turn around and sell to you at a discounted price where they can still make money, but you're still going to pay less than you would on the market. So what I would say is, like, if you're like, okay, well, where do I find wholesalers? If you go, like, say you're looking in St. Louis, the first thing you should do is go to Google and put in "we buy houses St. Louis," and everybody who comes up, all those people for the most part are wholesalers. So you need to call those people and tell them who you are and what you do, and that you have the ability to close on deals if you find a good one, and start vetting people, seeing what kind of deals they're sending you, and that's how you can start to get on as many wholesalers lists as you can.
For sure, for sure. And as far as like long-term rentals, did you end up acquiring any more in addition to the initial 8 units?
Yeah, so currently I have 13 units there. I have the 8 that I started with. I bought a house. Actually, this crazy because the day that my brother was riding me around, I was telling you about
Mhm.
the house that I asked him about. The houses I asked him about were across the street from a golf course, and I was like, he was telling me like, yo, around 50 grand for these houses. I said, man, I want to own one of these houses that's across from this golf course. And man, lo and behold, man, a lady submitted a house on my website. She was selling. Her mother-in-law had passed away, left the house to her, and I did my first owner financing deal on that house, and it's sitting right across from that golf course. And so that was one of the ones I picked up. I got another, and I have 2 more duplexes as well. One of
Nice.
which I think I'm going to sell, but yeah, I got 2 more out there. So
Definitely, definitely. And before we jump into by the block LA, can you tell us more about the Indianapolis market? I don't actually think no, we haven't. I don't think we have had a guest who invests in that market. So can you tell us more about it? How it's changed since you've invested? Some of the reasons that you decided to invest there, and kind of what you see in the future.
yeah, I mean the main reason was just because I was in the city, I was able to ride around and see stuff, and that was pretty much that. And like I said, it was a toss up. It was a jump ball, between
Yeah,
the A and Indy, and Indy won out. The way it's changed since I've been there has been pricing. Prices are starting to go up, and they're still cheap compared to what we pay in Cali. I mean, you still can buy rental properties all day for $40,000 to $50,000 easy. But when I first got in the market, I mean, you probably were getting stuff probably more around 30, 35, and they still pop up. You just got to watch out for them. Um, you know, excuse me, Indy. as a whole is kind of like a forgotten city to me to a degree. Like a lot of people kind of just forget Indianapolis is
Yeah.
even there. And but you know, they have a lot of job growth there. There's a lot of people who work in the medical field there. A lot of tech jobs are coming there. So it's definitely on the upswing. And a lot of areas are starting to become, you know, unfortunately gentrified, but it's leading to more development and stuff like that happening. So it's a growing city. It's definitely something that you should keep your eye on if you're interested in one of the Midwest markets for sure.
Definitely, definitely. So let's talk more about by the block LA, the recent movement. It's probably been a little over a year now. So those of
Yeah.
us who are in LA, we're pretty much well aware of everything that you're doing with the group and with the movement. But I guess for those who maybe are not aware and are not plugged in with the group and everything you're doing in LA, can you just talk more about it and also why you started it and yeah, we'll take it from there.
Yeah. Well, the group is an educational group that we have in LA. Buy Back the Block LA is what it's called, and we started it because after Nipsey passed, you know, it just didn't sit right with my spirit. You know, and like Malcolm X is one of my biggest influences in my life. Reading his book literally changed the paradigm for me. The way that I saw myself as a black man and what I was capable of accomplishing, everything changed for me when I read that book, literally. And I thought about how he passed, and we didn't do anything about it. And I thought about Fred Hampton. I thought about, you know, I can go on and on, the people that we lost, and it was kind of like the system just kind of stole our heroes. They stole our light, and we didn't respond. So I felt like, okay, you know, I don't mean to take it too extreme on your show, but I feel like there's two responses. There's a physical one, and then there's a financial one. You know, and for me, a lot of people are not built for the physical one yet, which I understand. So okay. What can we do in the meantime? Well, we can all be warriors financially, right? And it kind of starts with putting weapons in people's hands, and the weapons are knowledge. You know, you have to know how the game works in order to be able to play it. So one thing about Nip was that he was very focused on ownership. You know, ownership was a big deal for him across the board, from music to real estate. You know, and I felt like he was very big on knowledge in general. You know, people talk. There's a Nipsey Hussle book club. You know, and that just speaks to the, you know, how the man used to consume information. So I felt that it was right for us to continue his legacy in that way. He is the reason why the group exists. It would not exist if it wasn't for him, because I was just flipping houses doing my thing. I wasn't even thinking about it. I didn't even want to have a group, but I just said, man, I was just moved to do it, so I did it. And we started meeting every first Wednesday of the month, and it started off with me just starting to doing for people what Juan Pablo's videos did for me, which was showing me what was possible. You know, it didn't give me every step that I needed to get through it. It just showed me, hey, this is actually something that's available to you. You know, so that's what I did with the group. Was I started by giving back what I knew. Hey, I've gone out of state and I flipped these houses and I bought them for this much and I sold them for that much. And I have a couple rental properties and I bought them for this much and I rent them out for that much. And here's how I did it. You know, and then giving that out. Um, you know, at the monthly meetings. And then we created a real estate investor starter guide, which we give away for free, which has terminology in it. It has word problems in it, all this stuff to be able to get you kind of up to speed. And then we started expanding outside of just me lecturing. We started bringing in guest speakers. So we had Carlton Lane Fiesta from Legacy Home Loans come in, and he gave a great presentation on different down payment assistance programs. I mean, I was sitting there taking notes, stuff I had never heard of.
Yeah,
Then we had Will Roundtree, who a lot of people know, and you know, obviously in the space for being a master of credit and credit repair and business financing. He spoke 2 months ago, and that was, man, that whole presentation was lit, man. And then last week we had, or last month we had Tanya Mackey, who's a certified financial instructor. She's talking about all things finance related, so that way you can get your money tight, savings, yada yada. So we've just expanded it a little bit just to try to encompass all things finance. You know, not foundation is real estate, but all things finance that our people can really use as far as building credit, maintaining it, and leveraging it. You know,
for sure. And the group is doing some investing as well, right?
Yeah, so one of the things that is really important for me, because I'm a student of Dr. Clyde Anderson, is
Mm-hmm.
group economics, right? And you know, like people say, man, individually, we're fingers, but together we come together and we make a fist. So we're stronger together. So what we did was we started we just decided like, hey, let's invest together as a group. So we all came with $3,000. We raised $51,000 together. We went out of state, flipped the house. We profited like 18 grand on that first flip. We have our second flip on the market right now. So I'm just trying to do right by the people who have been giving us the game on what to do for a long time.
Yeah.
Malcolm gave us the game before Clyde Anderson. Clyde Anderson gave us the game on what to do, and he's getting up in age now. And I can tell he's just looking at us like, man, y'all still not listening, huh? I told y'all what to do, but you running around here trying to solve it all kind of other ways. Get together, work together. So I'm trying to
Yeah.
take the knowledge that they gave and put it into action.
Definitely, definitely. That's amazing, man. So how does one raise $51,000 for like how?
Man, just
Yeah.
I didn't mean to cut you off, man.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
It's really the people, man. Like it ain't got nothing to do with me. It's the people. The people. Like we're at a time in history where the collective conscious levels of people is rising across the board. The conversations that people are having now about group economics and about politics and about like these are conversations that at the barbershop were not happening 15 years ago. Now you having different kind of conversations about white supremacy and systematic racism. It's like all this stuff that people, well, it wasn't even part of the lexicon back then. Now it's part of everyday jargon. So now you like, all right, people are waking up. You got rappers talking about ownership, not blowing money on stupid stuff. Like once it hits that seed, it's gone after that. It's just a matter of time because if you look at what the rap lifestyle was, and I know it better than most because I've been in the business since I was 19, it's all about lavishness and irresponsible behavior for the most part. That's what we celebrate in is irresponsible behavior and lavish living. When you get down to the people who celebrated that and you're changing the paradigm, now they're like, okay, instead of me having 18 million cars and painting them all the same color to show that I got this collection and I'm flexing, man, I'm trying to get these properties real quick. I'm trying to buy this commercial building. I want to own the place that my studio was in so I don't pay rent anymore. Like when you start looking at that shifting, oh, you got a problem on your hands. And that's what's happening with our community. It's starting to be a rumbling. Our generation is going to change everything. The kids who come behind us, they're going to know about LLCs. They're going to know about trust. They're going to know about all kind of stuff that we didn't know about. So we're getting dangerous as a people. And that's what it's beyond our control. It's already written, man. God, that's why it worked. It ain't because of me. It ain't because of nothing. It's because of what happened with Nip. It's what happened. It's what's happening in our history. It's where we are in time. It's just like this confluence of circumstances, and that's why it worked, in my opinion.
Definitely, definitely. So you mentioned that the group you did a first flip, which is dope, and is already a second one on the market. What do you see for the group like in the future? What are some goals or some thoughts that y'all have had?
Man, that's a good question. So, out the gate, we wanted to focus on being successful with the first one, proof of concept. And then now with the second one, we're looking to sell that one as soon as we catch a buyer for that. So the ultimate goal for me was just ownership by any means necessary. I had no specific destination. Like I kind of knew what city we were going to, but I didn't know what street, you know,
Yeah.
that we were going to stop on. So to me, the city was ownership. But now we're going to drill down and figure out what exactly we want it to look like. And one thing about the group is that I don't make the decisions. We all present the ideas and everybody votes. And whoever wins, whatever option wins is the option that happens. So if people say, hey, when we get the money up to X number of dollars, let's say $300,000, we want to buy an apartment complex, then that's what we're going to do. If that's what everybody votes on, if we say we want to buy commercial space, that's what we're going to do. It's all about what the group wants to do and what everybody votes on. And I keep it very simple that way because then that way everybody can live with it. Like if I voted for commercial and they voted for residential, I'm all right with it because I know that the majority of the group felt that way. And
Yeah.
ultimately, I'll be okay with that too, because I think it's better that way for everybody to have collective input. So, right now we're focused on growing that seed money as much as we can to where we get it to a couple of $100,000 or where we want it to be. And then that way we'll have enough punching power to go and really buy something and really start getting mailbox money in for the family. You know.
Definitely. Love it. Love it. And I had to ask you about this since you're local. I think I saw a post on your page. So can let's talk about the Baldwin Hills Mall, the sale and all this stuff going on. I'll just leave it there. Tell us your thoughts on it? I know a lot has changed in the last couple months. Like a lot has changed. But yeah, what are your thoughts on it? And I guess
And
also you could give some context for folks who are not local as well.
yeah, so um, without misspeaking, because obviously Damian Goodman is the best person to be able to talk about this. Man, that dude is so smart. He's the one that's running everything
Mhm.
in terms of like downtown Crenshaw and trying to make sure that we can have an opportunity to buy the mall. But for people who are outside the city, the Crenshaw Mall is sitting on the corner of King Boulevard and Crenshaw Boulevard. It's one of the most important landmarks in our city. I grew up going to that mall before we moved to Palmdale. All my memories and everything, like I mean, there's so much tied up into that mall for our community. And currently, our community that's surrounding the mall is under siege because we're being gentrified in neighborhoods and streets that you never thought you would have seen outsiders in there now. So getting the mall is a very, very, very big part of the plan to ultimately remove Black people from Los Angeles as a whole. If you look at San Francisco, they've been able to get the Black population down to 2%. That's the model for every other major city in America. And you might think that I'm wrong, but all of the signs are pointing to yes, because they're pushing you out your neighborhood, they're pushing you out to the outskirts, and now everything is so high priced that you can't buy in. So that's the thing. The mall is kind of like a stronghold for us. It's situated next to Leimert Park, which is another very historically Black area. It sits underneath Baldwin Hills, which is another, it's been like one of the most affluent Black neighborhoods in the country for years. If we lose the mall, it's not going to be good for any of us going forward. So there's been a lot of different groups, a lot of shady developers, some Black, unfortunately, a lot of sellout politicians, some Black, unfortunately, who have made it easy for these developers to come in and try to place hands on the mall. The people made such a fuss about it before that the first people who were going to buy got ran out or they were run out. And then now, I think Live Work, which is an organization connected to Jared Kushner, which is connected to Trump, is I think that they've received the rights to be able to buy the mall. So now, again, though, like I said earlier, never fold. So Damian and the crew are putting together a plan now on how we're going to try to get them out of here as well. And we're not going to stop until we can make it to where we can buy the mall as a community, own it as a community, and be able to control our own neighborhood. So that's kind of like the top level. If you go to downtowncrenshaw.com, there's a petition there that we need people to sign. We also are they're also offering memberships for $5, and the $5 membership, what it gets you is the ability to invest when the time comes into buying the mall. Because if we can make it a members only thing, we can probably get around some of the things that come with the SEC when you're doing like public raises for money. It'll be a private thing for members only. So, man, if you want to be a part of that, you in the LA area, I would encourage you, man, go to downtowncrenshaw.com, sign up for these Zoom calls they're doing, be a part of the action, be a part of the fight, and do what you can to help.
For sure, for sure. And I know you have appreciate you breaking that down. Looking forward to seeing how that goes. I'll try to like my
Yeah.
best to keep tabs on it, and just it's interesting. So I guess we'll see. We'll see where things land with it. Hopefully, it's in the favor of the community. I guess we'll see. Uh, so I know you have a course coming out uh, fairly soon. So can you talk to us more about that? And of course, when it's out, definitely we'll let the listeners know it'll be included in everything. But we'd love to hear more about that and just the idea behind the course.
Yeah, so I decided to write a book called Section 8 Rentals Made Easy, because I saw a lot of people who were bypassing Section 8 because they had uh, misinformation. about, they had been misinformed about what the program really was and what it had to offer. And for me, I think that there's a special connection for me because when Letitia, who was my property manager in LA or in Cali, when she took over the house in Palmdale, and we had our tenants in and they were through Section 8, man, that family treated my property better than any the tenant that I had prior. I mean, when it was time for me to sell the property, it broke my heart because I didn't want them to have to move. But it was like a move that I had to make to try to level up for my family, for myself. And I came to the lady and I said, hey, I gotta let this thing go, but I want to give you as much advance notice as possible. And she was disabled.
Wow.
Her husband was disabled, and both of their kids were like straight A students. And I mean, just doing all the right things, And she said, all right, Danny, well, we hate to leave, but if we leave and we leave the property in good condition, would you mind giving us our full security deposit back? And I'm just like, yeah, absolutely. Like, I'm not in the business of keeping deposits anyway, but I would love nothing more than to give you all the money back. And man, I'm talking about when I walked in that house, boy, you could perform surgery on the kitchen floor. I mean, it was, man, my eyes was burning from all this pine saw she used. I mean, she killed it, man. Like the house was spot lit, and that really stuck with me, man, because obviously for our community, like there's a stigma with Section 8 and thanks to Ronald Reagan, welfare queen, and everything that brings to mind. And I was just like, man, I'm gonna do what I can to create a win-win scenario. So for me, I'm a systems-based person. I like things that I can set my watch to. I don't want to have to call you and chase you for the money. Even though I have a management company, I just don't like the idea of things being able to vary. With Section 8, they pay market rent. So if the market rent is 900, you're going to get 900, and it shows up like clockwork, like a direct deposit that you get from your job to your bank account on payday. And for me, I felt like it was the best of both worlds because now I can create quality housing for people in our community, because a lot of people who I do rent to are from our community, and I can treat them with respect. I can treat the property with respect. In Indianapolis in general, it's a place that I would say can be hostile towards Black people. And a lot of property management companies in Indianapolis do not handle Section 8. They won't touch it. So who does that impact? That hurts us, right? And then the type of housing that you see on Section 8, a lot of times people cutting corners on the rehab, they kind of just slapping together whatever. They don't care if the paint colors on the wall match. It's just whatever. And I felt like, man, people deserve better than that. Just because somebody's going through something financially doesn't mean that you give them whatever. You treat them with the same amount of respect you treat anybody else with. So for me, I try to put good quality materials in the house, and make them look and feel like home, and I wanted to help share that with people who were looking to be landlords, who were like, man, I want to be a landlord, but I'm really scared about having to deal with an eviction. I'm really scared about not getting paid my rent. I say, all right, cool. Let me show you how to be able to get involved with Section 8. So that way you have guaranteed rents coming in. Because during the COVID crisis, I have not missed one single cent in rent, thanks to Section 8. So I'm going to teach you how to lock in with guaranteed rents, how to rehab your properties the correct way, how to beat the inspection, and how to be able to build your empire kind of one property at a time, just by using watch, rinse, repeat with that strategy.
Definitely. That definitely will be available. We'll certainly have the links available for people when that comes out. So man, you've done a whole lot. Buying holds, flips, some wholesaling, getting a group together. What does the future look like? What are some things, some goals you have in I guess the next couple years or so?
Man, delegation is what the future looks like.
Yeah.
I want to be able to keep kind of envisioning what the big picture should look like. And right now is I'm still at the controls a lot, like in Buy Back the Block. So I'm looking for good social media managers. If anybody's out there that's listening, tap in with me, man. Because I'm looking to just hand off some of those tasks to people who love to do that more than I like to.
Yeah.
So that way we can just continue to focus. And I would say The future is delegation and group economics. I want to figure out how we can do kind of what on a bigger scale for our entire community, because I think that teamwork for us is going to be the key to us being successful. Like individual success in our community is already priced into the system. So that's the reason why you can have an Oprah, a Tyler Perry, a Michael Jordan, a yada yada, and it doesn't put a dent in the system at all. But what the system is not set up for is how to deal with everyday blue collar, working class black people who figure out how to level up through working together. And that's what I'm into trying to figure out, you know.
For sure, for sure. So is there anything else you want to leave with your listeners? Any advice or tips for someone who is interested in real estate and any of the things that you've done? What advice would you give to somebody in that position who's just kind of starting out, but just is interested in real estate?
Man, that's a good question, because I feel like there's so much different advice you can give depending on what lane or what situation somebody's in, you know.
Mhm.
But I think just the blueprint just to start is fail forward. You know, I hear that a lot in my masterminds and stuff like that, which is don't get paralysis by analysis. You know, educate yourself the most you can. Listen to people who are smart. Listen to this podcast so that way you can get educated on how things work, and then do the work yourself of getting on the phone. Like you got to get out your comfort zone. So, like the guy who teaches my cold calling course, he has a saying called TTP, which is talk to people, and you have to adopt the TTP mindset. I know some of us are like introverts. We don't like getting on the phone, talking to people we don't know. But we got to throw that out the window, because we're trying to, you know, in order to be able to do something you never done, you know, you got to do some, you know, some things that you never tried before. So, um, get on the phone, talk to people, call realtors, call property managers, get referrals, call the referrals, ask them questions about how the property manager was or how the realtor was, and educate yourself as much as you can without causing paralysis by analysis. And then when you're ready to make the leap and you've checked off all your boxes of like, I'm gonna do everything I can that's in my power to make this deal go the right way, then leap. And if it doesn't, trust me, you will be okay. If you took the whole path that you were supposed to take, which is checking all the boxes, calling the references, asking for help, you know, DMing me, DMing Sam, asking people, getting answers, trust me, whatever little nicks and bruises you take on that first deal, they're gonna be minor compared to the person who I buy properties from all the time. The landlord who didn't educate themselves, just wanted to get in the business like I did in the very beginning. But unfortunately for them, it went the wrong way, and their properties ended up in my portfolio at a steep discount. So you won't be that person. You'll be the other person who can take the nicks and the bumps and keep rolling.
For sure, for sure. And where can people find you if they want to learn more about you, connect with you? Where would be the best place to hit you up?
Yeah, man. Hit me on IG. My handle is Danny Carter One. That's WON. So my name, Danny Carter, and WON1. And same thing on Twitter, man. Danny Carter One. I just actually, I'm super late to the party. I've been having like a creeper Twitter account where I just been watching stuff going on, but I never tweet. So I finally have my own personal Twitter. It's the same thing, Danny Carter One. I have 0 followers. So one of y'all hop in there, be my first follower real quick.
Definitely, definitely, definitely. And then what about the buy back the block pages?
Yeah, man. So go to same thing. IG is at Buy Back the Block LA. Twitter is Buying Back LA at Buying Back LA, and then you want to get our free starter guide, man. Trust me, that one's gonna help change the game for you, because on that guide we show you how hard money loans work. We give you word problems. We give you an answer key so you can check your math to make sure you're understanding and following along. You can go to buybacktheblockla.com to get that starter guide, man, and that's absolutely free.
Definitely, definitely. Make sure I have all those links in the show notes. But man, this has been a great interview. It's crazy. Like I didn't even give this backstory, but we met at the real estate meetup that Jacqueline
Yeah.
organized back in like March. So it's crazy. Like there's 3 guests. So I met Charles at that one. I met Mark Jones. So for those listening, it's Todd Millionaire, Todd, I guess Todd Billy now.
Yeah.
Living rent free. So it's crazy. Like we
Yeah.
all at this event, they had been on the show prior, and I had been seeing what you're doing for a long time. So I was really glad to be able to meet you at that event too, and glad that we can get you on a podcast too, man. So
Likewise,
this has
man.
been an inspirational interview. Man, it's great to just learn more about your story and what you've done and what you're doing, man. So, keep up the good work. I appreciate it.
Nah, man, likewise, and back at you, man. Like the way you've been booming. I know we were kind of chopping it up before we started recording, man. But I've been watching from a distance, and every time you post a milestone, I'm like, damn, man, Sam, out of here, man. So it's really dope to see, people who have a good vibe, good spirit, seeing them win and watching it kind of just come in increments and them getting bigger and bigger. So yeah, man, shout out to you too, man.
Appreciate it. I appreciate it. And thank you all for listening to another episode of the Black Real Estate Dialogue podcast. Look forward to hearing from you all soon.